Hi, and welcome back to this series, this pressure-free living series I put together for Stress Awareness Month with the various mental performance and leadership coaches. And tonight we have Paul Price from Australia. Paul and I think we met a year ago, 2 years ago,
Yeah, just over a year
something,
ago, yeah.
just over a year ago, yeah. And I really wanted to have Paul on here because he's dug into the mental game after being a world champion squash player. And so you know your sport so well, but then moving to the mental piece of it, I thought would be really, really beneficial. So welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Al. It's a privilege to be here and be amongst the guests that you've put together. What a lineup you've had, and yeah, I'm humbled to be a part of it and to be asked to share some insights and sh share some of my work and with everybody. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
absolutely. Let's start a little bit with your background. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career, and then let's dive in.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. Um, I was I was always in love with sports. Like I was running around playing sports. I think as soon as I could run, my parents always said that I didn't walk. I just started running and kicking footballs and trying to play and compete with my uncles mostly and brother in any sport that we could find or create. My dad played squash quite a lot socially, like at a decent level, and so I did find myself growing up around squash courts, but never really took to the sport until later, until I was about 13. But I was always found in the car park hitting the ball against a wall, or I was, yeah, just running around, just being active, right, and just trying to entertain myself any way possible. Um, but AFL football was my big love, and I was quite good at that sport. But it's sort of around the ages of 11, 12. I sort of transitioned and got an opportunity to play some squash and um, kind of just fell in love with the sport very quickly. Um, and I was kind of hooked. So I started taking lessons and really, improved rapidly, was fully immersed in it, like anything I could sort of absorb from the sport, um, I would take on board and yeah, couldn't get enough of it. So fast forward to I developed myself as a player and worked hard, set some goals, made the state team as a junior, then set my sights on making the Australian national team for the World Junior Championships. I can't even remember what year that was now, El, but
All
it was a while ago.
right, you're not as old as I am, so
Joe might have a knowledge on that because it was in Christchurch, maybe in 93, 94.
okay.
Um, but anyway, I had to work extremely hard to make that team because I took the top four players in the country as under 19s. And I just before that, about 4 months before the three qualifying tournaments, I was given a scholarship to the Australian Institute of Sport. And so I moved to Brisbane and I basically moved into a house with a whole bunch of the athletes that I had to compete with to make that final spot. And so the top three guys in our country were kind of heads and shoulders above the rest. Like they were kind of, it was almost like it was hard pressed for to see that anyone was going to knock them off to uh to take their spot on the team. So I think it really came down to there was one spot available. And I
Mm.
remember this very clearly, and I always share this with my athletes, is that when I was given these scholarships to the Australian Institute of Sport, I got access to a sports psychologist, a guy named Ian Liner, who was one of the well-known sports psychologists in Australia at the time. And I remember the other guys all kind of laughing about it and really not taking it seriously. They were kind of like, really putting the whole kind of thing down a little bit. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
but I was always fascinated by goal setting and motivational speaking and quotes and different things. So I'm like, I'm going to go check this out. So I went along and I was blown away by what Ian shared with me, but he taught me how to visualize. He taught me mental imagery. And so I learned that skill and he gave me a cassette tape. Yep, that's how long ago it was. Cassette
Yes.
tape. Um, to take home so I could practice this visualization thing, the art of like seeing myself achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve and perform the way I knew I would have to achieve those goals. So when I got back to the house that afternoon, again, the guys were all like, "Oh, how was that? Like, I bet you that was a waste of time." And da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it was pretty bad." And I sort of just played with it, and but then I dove into it. Like I took that part of it seriously. I'm like, I'm doing the same training as everybody else. I'm doing the same sprints, the same strength sessions, the same squash sessions, the same coaches. Everything was the same. But the one thing I knew they weren't doing was this imagery thing and the mental piece. And I had no idea about the impact that it would have on my life at that point. But I'm like, you know what? If it's an edge, I'm gonna exploit it. Because I
So
was ranked about
good. It's
nine in
so
the
good.
country. So I basically ran with it and I made that fourth spot. I beat the last two guys in the last tournament by in 5 games narrowly and I fully believe that the difference between winning and losing those two matches was the pathways and the images I had set in my mind that my brain and body were in pursuit of. It was
Yeah.
almost like it was already written. And then I realized that was an edge. So I continued to use mental imagery and I worked with more sports psychologists, Noel Blundell, who worked with Agassi and Sampras and some really impressive people. He taught me a whole bunch. But the reality was that I really struggled with the mental and the emotional piece of being a professional athlete and the journey. And we won't get into the details of why I struggle with that in this conversation, but to come back full circle now and understand why I was so emotional about all these things. It had nothing to do with my sport or the results or the outcome. It just really had a lot to do with the relationship I had to myself and the
Oh
pressure
yeah.
that I would bring to myself. And that was pretty impactful. So that kind of leads me to my work today, where I do this work with athletes from all different sports and even business and entrepreneurs. Um, but yeah, but in between, I was a musician as well. So I performed a lot. I wrote songs. I kind of just fell in love with music and performing and taught myself to write songs and play the guitar and um, released some albums on iTunes and all that sort of cool things. Toured and played in North America.
That's so
And,
fun. That's so fun.
and
I'm a classical
yeah,
violinist, but
well,
that
you
was
get
my
a bit
life
more, right?
before.
So
So
and then I lived overseas and moved back to Australia about 11 years ago and fell back into coaching squash and worked my way into a position where I was selected as the Australian national coach. And I did that for a number of years and resigned towards the end of 2019 um, in not a great mental way. Like I was not mentally well. My well-being had taken a hit through the things I was exposed to in the organization and the job, and probably not having the tools to actually manage myself or navigate those circumstances effectively at that time. So, but I kind of resigned with not knowing what I was going to do with my life anymore, and I sort of realized that through flow science and positive psychology and sports psychology that that was a passion that I had, but it also helped me work through my own shortcomings and issues that I had leading up to that point. So it was kind of like really a profound moment, a full circle moment of going, ah, this is why I was like that. This is how why I reacted this way. And this, but flow states really gave me a massive insight into how my life unfolded. So I say now, like I really just I chased flow around all my life, from sport to music to coaching and presenting to performing and speaking. Like these things all bring me a ton of flow, and I'm the type of person that once I get that feeling, once I get that high from that thing, like I'm fully immersed and I embrace it, and I just somehow just figure it out. I just try to figure it out. So I kind of, yeah, as I say, I've just had a successful life and successful career in the things I've done because I've just chased my flow around, really.
Mhm. I love that. That's really fun. It's a great word. It's an absolutely great word.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the main, what are some tips and insights you would like to share tonight with everybody?
Oh, look, as we've, in our pre-conversation, like there's so many avenues we could go down and
I
so many,
know.
and we've only got a short amount of time, but look on the concept of what you suggested we want to explore in terms of performance anxiety, sleep, and then how do we go about achieving our desired results? I was thinking that what I've learned and what I didn't do well as an athlete, which is the hardest thing to have young athletes embrace, is really that your level of performance anxiety or the relationship you have to that and your ability to achieve your desired results kind of all starts with sleep.
Which is why I put them all together, by the way. It's like,
And because this, sleep is such a, it's probably the number one performance enhancing tool that's legal that we have access to on a day-to-day basis. And it's a game changer. And if I could take my career back as an athlete, you know, we knew sleep was important, but I didn't have protocols around it. I wasn't taught the true importance of it and how impactful it could have been on my performance, not just my ability to perform on the court, but my ability to think through scenarios in the court, to be more resilient, to be anti-fragile, to really have, a bulletproof vest around me where I could really stay focused and hold the line and find my
mhm.
flow.
And you know
You know,
that
so you can't like,
there's so much new science today on the glymphatic system, on the actual cleaning of the brain that can't take place if you've triggered the stress response. Like if you're under the
hmm
influence of those hormones, like that whole system can't even work when you're sleeping. And so
yeah,
the mental
yeah,
and physical gain goes down.
yeah. It goes hand in hand, right? And so good mental performance really starts from what you do when you're unconscious. And ironically, our best performances come from an unconscious place. But through lack of sleep, we often remain way too conscious and we're heightened in that state, which then obviously the stress hormones and the things that we expose ourselves, that our threat response and the way we see and view the world and react to the world is significantly changed. So I always think that, mental performance really starts in recovery. And there's no better place to recover than in sleep. So having great sleep protocols is
I
essential
just
for me.
want you to say that again, Paul, because that was so good.
I don't
Mental
even know what I
performance.
said, El.
You
Come
say,
on, we're in the
okay,
flow here.
mental performance starts in recovery. Like performance starts in recovery.
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
after you're like that net, okay, what's that next window until you're performing again? I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we often, athletes and as humans, as performers, right? Coaches, you're coaching teams, you're coaching athletes, you're a leader in an executive boardroom. Like we often think of like, oh man, I'm going to need to recover after that big presentation or that big project or that game or that match, right? But where we get it wrong, in my opinion, is that we got to start recovery starts. You got to recover first, so then you have full access to your full potential in performance. And this is where it's really hard to get athletes to taper and recover well, or for executives to go, you know what? I've got that big presentation on Monday. I'm just going to disconnect for the weekend so I can have full access to my resources and my dopamine levels, my neurochemicals that are going to help me perform and find my flow. Um, Prior to that, they think, oh, I'm going to need to have a few drinks after this conversation
And
or
you
this
might
event.
not. You might not
And
at all need any of that. It's
yeah, and
so
you don't.
interesting.
So I'm a big promoter of like get your recovery right first, get your well-being right first, all the, what I like to call flow hygiene. Um, and then performance almost like kind of takes care of it, can take care of itself. Like
Mhm.
we actually find better access to flow states or like bring ourselves onto the precipice of flow more gracefully and easy, and we sort of navigate through a struggle phase. But sleep is such a critical thing. So for me, and this is what I do. This is how I've improved my sleep quality once I've started learning the science and experiencing the benefit of the impact that poor sleep quality has on the way I show up in the world as a father, as a husband, as a coach, and just as a part of society. Really, is that if I don't get the right sleep, I'm not the best version of myself. And so the things that are critical to me that I think are worthwhile sharing, kind of my sleep stack, it really is about the consistency in the sleep and wake times. Like that, if there's anything you get right, that's the thing to get right, in my opinion, because it just sets the circadian rhythm um, in the right place, and it works like clockwork, as we say, right?
Yeah.
Um, so the wake time is probably the most critical, waking up at a very similar time. But then my next step is always get sunlight straight away, like
I
just
love that.
direct sunlight. So get outside, windows, whatever you can to get sunlight straight in there. Again, it starts to release some cortisol and again sets the rhythm, the biological rhythm, the clock moving perfectly in time with where you would want to start winding down at nighttime. So that's sort of the first two steps. Nighttime here in my house, once we finish dinner, the lights get dimmed.
Mm.
Yeah. Like we dim all the lights to start emulating the sundown. So that starts to release more melatonin into our system, start to feel that winding down, um, reducing screen time. All these little things are obviously helpful, um, but sometimes not doable depending on what you're doing and who you
Introducing,
are,
yeah.
your tendencies and your habits. Um, but then during sleep for me, it's like I try to read at least 10 pages of a book, something that's not too stimulating, something that I can kind of take in, but not necessarily want to keep or remember, but something just sort of help me decompress. Or I do a meditation, practice breathing, and then I wear a sleep mask and I tape my mouth closed. Um, those things
What do you
are.
tape your mouth closed with? I'm so curious.
There's a product. Patrick McEwen he has a company called Oxygen Advantage who I did training with. He did his breathing course. Um, he's got a product. It's called mouth tape. I can share it in
Okay.
the notes and things
Yeah, that'd be
with.
cool.
But basically, it's like elastic tape or like a thing that goes around your mouth here, and it just basically gently compresses your lips together
Okay.
as you sleep to keep your mouth closed, so that it just forces you then to breathe through your nose.
Right, right.
Now, the reason that that's so impactful is that we build up a lot of nitric oxide, a lot of nitric oxide pools in the nose. There's a lot of blood vessels and things in those areas, which then releases nitric oxide, and nitric oxide relaxes our nervous system.
Nice. That's so interesting.
So we actually, if we've got that releasing into our system, our heart rate drops quicker. Um, we relax more our muscular system. Like we're less likely to be releasing cortisol, adrenaline, and things like that. So it basically just helps us calm down and shut down.
Nice. Oh, that's so
So
interesting.
since
Do
I've
you
been doing
not
that,
feel, I mean, at first, did you kind of feel like you were claustrophobic? Oh, I don't know, like maybe claustrophobic or like,
yeah, look,
eh.
that's at first that was my concern about it, but this product that he designed, because it goes around the mouth here, you can open your mouth really easily.
Okay, okay.
Like so, it's just like a subtle someone just doing this.
Got it. Okay, okay.
Right? So it's
Interesting.
very gentle.
Yeah.
And you know what? I felt really comfortable straight away using it.
Okay.
Um, and so
I might
so I,
slap that on my husband.
yeah, it does help with the snoring and the sleep apnea aspect as well. There's a lot of science.
Yeah, yeah. Makes
Um,
sense.
that's kind of the sleep stack that I use that is a game changer. And obviously I've got a 3-year-old and 6-year-old. So over the last 3, 4 years, sleep is
Precious.
hard to come by sometimes, right? So
Right.
when I am asleep, I know that I'm getting the best quality by doing those things.
Yeah.
And man, once you do it for a while and you get into a routine or a rhythm and like, wearing a Whoop or an Aura ring or stuff like that, and you start tracking your sleep quality and you start to notice the numbers that are related to those things, um, it's a game changer,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I've been a very fortunate person that way. Like I'm very structured and disciplined and sleep really, really well. But I run into so many people that don't.
Yeah.
That's a real issue for them. And sometimes as you age, it gets even worse. And so it's
Yeah.
wow. I love that. I love that sleep stack idea too. That someone else that was on, I can't remember which person it was, shared that same idea that your morning and your evening, we talked morning, evening routines.
Yeah.
Uh, I told you when we got on here, like I'm on the edge of the time zone, so it's very dark in the morning in Michigan in the winter. If
Yeah.
I were going to wait for sunrise, it would be a while. So
Yeah.
it gets a little hard for us during the winter months. You're in winter, you're in going into winter
I'm
soon.
coming out of summer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's not a
So
problem. In the summer here, the sun comes up at 4:30 a.m., right? Pretty quickly. and it goes down around 6, 7-ish p.m. But look, even just turning the lights on,
Yeah.
and getting the best quality light you can is helpful. Screens, like, we often just grab our phones and look at our phones, and that's not
Yeah.
the right type of light that you want to be getting into your system
Yeah. That's
straight away.
beautiful.
So,
The first thing I look at in the morning is actually a pine branch out here. I talk to it. Okay. It's my friend. But it's like the first thing I look at, and it tells me, is there a breeze today? Like the needles are always different. Like I analyze it. It's fascinating. But I
yeah,
like focus in on nature. And trees are super important to me. So
yeah.
trees.
And I think the other thing with having like a sleep stack routine is that it just you just train your brain to respond to know, okay, this is what's coming next.
Right,
You know,
right.
this is why we have performance routines in sport. That's why, priming routines, because it tells the brain what's about to happen. And the brain loves that certainty. It goes, we're dimming the lights. Oh, okay,
And
time to go.
children love that certainty too. They really
Yeah,
do.
it takes away the uncertainty of things. And again, like the impact that that has on anxiety and stress alone, just having those controllables in place, is pretty impactful
Love it. Love it.
sometimes. So there's a lot there's so many benefits to it. I
Mhm.
find that are helpful with the way we show up the next day to perform
Mhm.
um,
Mhm. For
at
sure.
our yeah. Um, but I guess look from a performance anxiety standpoint, which is obviously the thing that can sabotage a lot of us from achieving our desired results.
Mhm.
Uh, I kind of learned that early on in my study and training that the frame that I like to use is that we often think of performance anxiety as like, okay, I'm going to perform something. This is making me really nervous. And funny thing is that the very thing that's making us nervous is the same thing that we love to do.
Right.
It's very rare. I often say, like, if you and I had to play a game of table tennis, would you be nervous? Probably not. Me neither. But if we were going to play a game of squash, I might be like, well, I've got a lot on the line here. I've got a bit of a reputation to uphold.
And I'd be terrified.
So it depends on what the meaning behind the event is and how you relate to that. But in terms of mitigating it, like the first thing is to know that performance anxiety is probably going to happen. It's okay. It's your body priming you for peak performance. There's not many performances that will happen at your peak or at your best without some level of anxious energy, anxiety, or performance anxiety. So it's almost for me, it's a prerequisite to get into your flow state. And the flow cycle, which was developed, I've forgotten the guy's name right now. Herbert, he studied at Harvard, um, professor. He calls it the flow cycle.
Mhm.
And to get into a flow state, it's a four-stage process. And we always start with struggle, which is where performance anxiety spikes. So we feel nervous. We feel a bit, I'm going to do this speech. Oh my God. And we start to sweat. And now, we start to get really amped up. And the brain, the conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex grabs hold of any information. And the amygdala starts to fire about all the threats. What can go wrong? And am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to And it's that point there that what's actually really happening is that your brain and body are recruiting all the necessary focusing chemicals and mechanisms for you to actually drop yourself into a flow state. Be-
Interesting. Oh wow.
um,
We gotta go deep someday.
but really, really, that at the core of that, and I learned this from Stephen Kotler at the Flow Research Collective in the study with him, is that, and from a biological standpoint, anxiety and excitement show up the exact same way. So if you look under the hood, you can't tell whether someone's feeling anxious or whether they're feeling excited. So then what makes that experience real for somebody? And this is a really big mic drop moment for a lot of the athletes I work with and performers. I'm like, how do you know you're feeling anxious? And they're like, well, because I'm nervous and I'm worried about what could happen. I said, oh, so you're imagining a future that you don't desire that's causing you to experience what you think as a feeling is anxiety. I said, but what if? What if what you were feeling was just excitement, but you didn't know how to focus and think about the right thing that's going to make you feel excited? And so the tool I love to give athletes now is it's called the love to list. And that basically brings to, so if it's an athlete about to perform, I said, tell me what you love about your game. I'm worried about this tournament. I'm worried about this. The nationals are coming up and things like that. Cool. You should be. It's a big moment. That's okay. Like, it's not going to be the last big moment you've got to face.
That's
It's not
right.
the last time you feel this way. It's not going to be the last time, but so let's get good at facing it. And so I'm like, so tell me what you're worried about. So I'll say, I'm worried that I'm going to mess up. I'm worried that this, and I'm worried my coaches are going to do this. And I like to think of pressure in sort of three buckets, right? What's the expectation? Pressure comes from expectation. Pressure comes from judgment. What are others going to think about me? What am I going to think about me if I mess up? And consequences. What's going to happen to me if I fail? And so if we're in those three buckets, well, then we're probably going to experience anxiety. But if we're in the
Can
buckets
you
of
can you give us the three buckets again? This is so good. Three buckets.
expectation,
Expectations,
expectations, judgment,
judgment.
and consequences. So if your mind is anchored to any of those three buckets and what could be swimming around inside those buckets, then yeah, you're going to experience your biology as anxiety. But if you open a bucket of I love to, and what's in there, it's like, I love to play squash, or I love to play volleyball. I love to play cricket. I love to speak in front of an audience.
Mhm.
I love to build my business and I love to pitch to people. I love inspiring people with my ideas. And okay, so I love to do that. Okay, what else do you love to do? I love to, and the list goes on. Because if we didn't love it, we wouldn't be in that position in the first place. Right. Now I'm talking like some people get put in a public speaking situation because like your boss says, okay, yeah, I need you to go down and pitch this idea to that, or go and present this and uh, I don't know how to do that. Or like
Yeah.
there's a,
I've
you
worked
know,
with some of those
we're
clients.
talking about,
Yeah.
we're generally talking about people who are well trained and well versed in what they're doing. They're kind of experts at what they do.
Yeah.
Right? They're high performers. So they already know what to do. They already know how to do it, but they're just not focused on the right bucket. So I love to say, give me a list of what you love about your sport, on and off the court, the people you get to hang out with at your events, your teammates. I love to support I love to cheer for my teammates. I love to, and the list goes on and on and on and on.
So
And I
good.
guarantee you, and if anyone's listening to this, you can think about this in your main domain of where you might feel that pressure to perform, or anxiety or nervousness, and switch it to like, what do you love about the fact that you get to do those things, and list five things, say them in your head or say them out loud, and just watch how your biology, your feelings transfer to this feeling of excitement. And man, I can't wait to play. Yeah, I might be a bit worried about my outcomes, but hey, I can't control them. And that's where you get into the more the nitty-gritty stuff with that with people. But
Hmm.
a tool standpoint, like focus on what you love about the thing can really transform anxiety to excitement and love
Hmm.
very quickly. Very
Yeah.
quickly.
Oh, I love it so much. I was thinking about this, my conducting debut at Michigan. There's four of us in the green room. I'm the first woman they've ever had, right? And I just walk in and I'm like ready to go. I don't have my own dressing room, so I'm in with all the guys, right? So I'm like, we're just back there and they're going on and on how they haven't eaten anything like all day. And they're just going crazy. And I'm like, oh crap. I just had a huge bowl of venison chili. Like it didn't dawn on me like, and I love what you just said because I was focused on, oh my God, I love this Mozart so much. Like I can't wait to get out there and do this Mozart. I can't wait. Like the love of it was the thing that
Yeah,
was, I just did my day. I didn't even,
yeah,
but it was fascinating to watch everybody else like just be like massively under the line.
yeah.
Yeah.
And just in that, right? Just even that, as you said that, like the image that creates in my mind is that I just can't wait to play Mozart. right? It just compresses everything into a present moment focus
Mhm.
and it takes away the cognitive load of all the things. I just can't wait to play it. And that I can't wait to play is nothing to do with mistakes or getting it right or winning or losing or nailing it or something. It's just I can't wait to play. And when we play, flow states are so much more present. That's why it's so hard to get my 3 and 6 year old to listen to us when we say it's time to go in the bath, guys. And they're just in flow. They're just in flow. And I have this conversation with my wife quite often. I'm like, you're trying to interrupt their flow from way over there.
Right, right.
Okay. And I'm like, you're gonna have to get right in their face and say, hey, we need to pause the fun now. And sometimes, and more times than not, that still doesn't work the first time.
Right, right.
But that's the power of play. It's the power of play. And just like, so if we can bring ourselves to the focus of like everything is a creative opportunity to play, whether we're competing or we're creating a proposal or going to do a presentation or you're trying to pitch to an investor. Like it's all a moment of creativity and play. And if you can embrace that with the that I love to concept, you bring love into anything, and man, like you can have a great time
Yeah, yeah,
doing anything. And I fully believe that, at the core of our flow states, that our peak potential as humans, like the thing that brings us to flow is the things that we find love in that moment and present moment. So,
yeah.
you can go into any spiritual direction you want here as well. But
But also when you really love your teammates, because squash, like I ran cross country in high school and I was captain. I was like, we're going to be a team. Because you can
yeah,
just be all individuals, you know? And I'm like, no, we're going to be a team. And I found out just recently that one of the girls a year younger than I, she became a coach of that particular team for 20 years. She used all the things that I put in, like for 20 years. I had no idea. I was just making a joke about, remember when we used to? And she goes, oh, I have girls do that all that time. But that idea of love, and that came out when you were working with Yale, you know,
yeah,
that you could see it and you could see it in the Penn team, just how much these young men were caring about each other. You know, it's a
yeah.
beautiful thing.
It really is you know, it's a unique predicament to find yourself in when you're an individual sport in a team environment.
Mhm.
Because if you think about this college squash format, the system is basically nine players are going to play each match out of a team of say 15, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
six guys, six girls are going to sit on the sidelines and cheer their teammates on. Um, During the week to week in between their matches of against Penn and Princeton and whoever else, right? They got challenge matches. They're all fighting for that top nine, one of those top nine spots, or to climb up the ladder. So they've got to have that a really kind of deep trust and sense of self and self-awareness, but also self respect for their teammates as individuals as well. To go, I'm gonna I'm coming to kick your ass, but I'm gonna do it with so much love that it's gonna make us both better. And then at the end of it, yeah, there's going to be that little awkwardness where we compete and we kind of go our own separate ways but having protocols in place for that to go, all right, I need to let that go and I need to come back together so I can continue to grow all of us as a unit. So it's
Yeah.
a very individual aspect with a team mind, but how do you
Mhm.
oscillate between those two mindsets is critical. And you want those guys and girls to be, more focused on the team to enhance the individual performance as opposed to enhancing the individual performance to then enhance the team. And that's a big mindset shift for individual sport athletes
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
condone. But
Totally.
the ones who do it are the ones that win championships. They
Hmm.
do it. They do. And
Hmm.
they all
And
bring themselves to the point of performance that is worthy of those championships, or to be in a place to even perform and compete for the championship. So it's a
yes.
critical component that individual athletes underestimate significantly. And that was a big experience I had with the Australian team at the Commonwealth Games in 2018. There were far too many eyes involved than there were the we. What's the best thing for
for the
the team
team.
as a whole, and that did a lot of internal damage to the culture and the experience that the team had
Wow.
um, at those games. Yeah, it was pretty. So again, knowing what I know today, it may have been handled differently, but again, it's but at the same time, there's a lot of that selfishness that makes individual athletes great as well. So you've got to, it's not
Yeah.
a, you've got to
I'm
get rid
not
of
sure
all
if
that.
it's
Got to get
selfishness
replaced.
or like, because I'll have people ask me, am I being kind of selfish doing? I go, no, 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 you're developing yourself.
Yeah, you're right.
Like,
It's not
no,
selfishness, more
it's tricky.
self-fulfilling, self-focused. It's, and
Yeah,
it's,
self-focus is a really good word for it.
but
Yeah.
there's a better way to go about it. And we weren't taught that in my day. And see
Mm,
it trickle into the generation after generation, generation after generation, to see it still there when I was at the opportunity to coach the national team.
mhm.
You weren't dealing with the layers of just the players there. You were dealing with the layers of the players from the last 30, 40, 50 years,
Yeah. Culture.
right?
Yeah.
Culture. Yeah.
Interesting.
Learned behaviors. This is how it's always been done. Of course, this is what's going to happen. So it's hard to make change in those environments, but you get the right people who are connected to the right goals, and it
Mhm.
can happen fast
Yeah.
with the right support, the right environment, the right coaches, the right conversation, the right language,
hmm
um, and the right focus of rewarding the right behaviors, not the right results.
hmm hmm Wow. Yeah. I have one little thing to close out. I'm just remembering when I was rowing for Michigan and we had a race in Ontario when midterms were going on, and half the boat went the night before and stayed in a hotel, and the other half came the next morning. And we
Mm,
vowed as a team we would never do that again because the boat was not in sync.
mm,
Boat was not in sync. And we even noted it. They drove up early, got in for breakfast. We weren't even sitting together. It was like four here and five here. Like
yeah,
Coxon's over here with us, and then there's the four over here. And we noted it, and we just made a vow as a team. We put our hands in and we go, never again. Like we're all a
yeah,
unit. We gotta be together. And it's
yeah.
because you're in a boat, you're individual, your team. It's fascinating. You gotta get that alignment,
It
you know.
you touch on a massive point, right? The Yale team, the first year I worked with them, not this past season, the season before, it was my first experience at the national championships. Um, it was I was there the second time with them in person. We'll do a lot of stuff online.
Mhm.
And the first day they went down to the from the hotel to the courts, which is probably a 400-meter walk.
Okay.
Uh, they all kind of they all kind of just got down to the lobby and just sort of got to the courts whenever they got to the courts. They all knew
Okay.
the practice time might have been like 9 a.m., but they all kind of just scattered over there at the same time. So the day of their first match, um, I said to him, I said, here's the first thing of connection. I said, and as a team, like when you walk into a building as a unit, you're communicating to the people around you, but you're also communicating within yourself, like a community feeling, like this sense of belonging and connection. Like the neurochemicals that go along with that are so potent and powerful. Again, all the same neurochemicals that are responsible for flow states. I said, we're walking together as a team. We walk together as a team into the building, and you all find the checkpoint where you're going to put your bags down. Then you can start doing your own individual warm-ups, conversations, different things you need to do. But you do not leave one man behind when you walk into that building. And so they implemented the next morning. And then they beat Harvard for the first time since 2016. And then the next day they lost to Trinity in the semifinal, in the last match, like in 5 games. It was so close. And I think they started the season as sixth seed. And then that sort of carried on to this next season where the sense of belonging and connection, like the power in that and the performance enhancement aspect of that. So again, I said, what do we want to do? And the first thing the captain said, we walk together as a team
Oh, I love it. Oh,
because that was a bit part of the reflection was the impact that that had on the way they felt when they walked into the building and the way they showed up and the way they connected with each other. Like it's such a brief moment, right? 400-meter walk, but they walk together as a unit.
yeah.
And
Well,
there's nothing more awesome to see like a group of athletes or a team of people walking together with the same uniforms on,
yeah.
connected in the same thing. And I think that if it's a great lesson I love to share with business owners, I'm like quite often businesses operate like they think they're going to work with people that are against them.
Mm,
But
right.
what if you actually th realize that you all have the same jersey on? What if you all realize,
Right?
like, how would you walk into that building to see those people if you're on the same team?
Yeah.
And there's a difference, there's a big difference. And
Oh,
just
that's
that to your
great.
point, like the separate travel arrangements or the sitting apart
Yeah.
for meal times in those environments, like it's just
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Wow.
so it's pretty powerful, yeah.
Well, Paul, we of course went over. We knew we would.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine.
Everyone's stuck with us, which is good though.
Yeah, yeah.
Is nice.
Um, and so how can people get a hold of you before we close out here and get into questions and answers with who's on Zoom here with us?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Paul Price. Probably search me under your name, L, if as a contact if
Yeah,
they need to. But LinkedIn, Instagram, it's Paul Price Performance. My website is inspiredpeakperformance.com.
beautiful.
Find me quite often on those channels. My emails and phone numbers and everything are all over those parts. So yeah, that's where I can be
Perfect.
found.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic, and we've got to do it again sometime because there's a lot to
Yeah.
cover.
There's a lot to cover. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having invited me on, Al. Thank you.
You're welcome.